Disaster in Dortmund, the adjustments in Atalanta, and finally lift-off v Leipzig as Celtic put in one of the best European performances we've seen in years and years at Celtic Park. An incredible night, and delighted that Paddy was there with myself on the occasion. Paddy, morning after the night before, bit jaded, long night but brilliant night. Talk us through it.
Just incredible. From start to finish, I think we were just in control of the full game. I think we had a little 10-minute spell where they came into it, and I think after the goal we just kind of had to try and find our footing again, but it didn't take as long. And I think a very, very worthy display, a very deserving display last night. Feel knackered today. I think I kicked every single ball last night just because we could see what we could do, and I think at 2-1, such a slender lead, and you're kind of thinking, you know, are we going to drop this? Are we going to drop the ball here? Are we going to tire? Because I just thought we were everywhere last night, but it just didn't seem to be the case. I thought he got his substitution spot on as well last night, and to get that third goal and to get the win was just incredible.
I thought Celtic's energy on the night, aside from their quality on the ball, I thought their energy was incredible. It's symptomatic of how Brendan Rodgers wants the team to play. And actually, in the last 20 minutes or so, Leipzig looked dead on their feet. They looked like they didn't have anything to offer, and I think Celtic just ran them ragged. And it's part of the game plan as well. You know, we've talked so much over the last couple of years about the Ange mantra that we never stop. Brendan Rodgers hasn't used that line, but the same stuff's applying, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same setup, absolutely. And I think that when you look at, you know, the second goal, no right to win it down there, and we just didn't give up. We kept going, and then to have the composure, it's a real attack to have the composure to play it in the way he did to Greg Taylor, and then just seeing it going all the way to Kuhn. The pressing was just excellent the full game, and yeah, I just think we spoke about Rodgers talking after the game. And one of the things you said, Tino, is that we need to be careful about hunting in packs. But I just felt that last night that's what we did do, because we pushed ourselves up the park an awful lot more. Felt that our back line were very, very comfortable with who they were dealing with. So they were a bit more comfortable standing in the halfway line than maybe against Dortmund, where the pace was a bit more. So they would maybe sit back a little bit more as well. There wasn't much of a threat from Leipzig at all last night.
No, maybe we'll get a chance to exact revenge on Dortmund in the semis or something like that, Paddy. But we can get there. Couple of big questions for you. Question one, is that Brendan Rodgers' best European performance as Celtic manager? And as an aside to that, when was the last time you've seen something as good as that from Celtic in Europe?
Yeah, I think Tom English, when we were in the car last night, you know, had said that might be his best performance. I think that's a very strong argument for that. I think we look at what he's done domestically, absolutely. But this is a team that, you know, are going into this tournament each year. I don't think that their focus is to go and try and win it, but they're there and thereabouts in the Bundesliga most seasons. They are assembling a team after year that goes and competes in Europe. We look at who they have played so far in this tournament, and it's all been narrow misses in terms of the games played. So to go and just control the game the way we did was exceptional. In terms of bringing it back to a game where we won, we didn't scrape the win, we dominated possession. Someone made a very, very good shout on Twitter and brought it back to Martin O'Neill's team against Lyon. I think that was a very assured display when we had Sutton and Liam Miller score. I think for me that was kind of very similar to that. I just think that from the off, we knew what the job was, and we just stuck to it, and we went and got a win.
Yeah, do you know, to get a 3-1 win against anybody at that level is good. It's encouraging. It's enjoyable. Leipzig are a very, very decent side. Myself and James done the pre-match, and we were all excited at the game. We're looking forward to it. But you were just trying to temper it by reminding everybody how good a side they are. They're second in the Bundesliga for a reason. You'll have heard this stat a few times now, but they've only lost 5 league goals in 9 games this season so far, 2 of which were against Dortmund just at the weekend. They're a very decent outfit. They've got 2 of the hottest properties in Europe in terms of their strikers. They've got experience across the board. But Celtic just completely ignored all of that to an extent and brought our game to them. I read a really interesting article. I seen the article yesterday. I reread it last night. Headline, 5 reasons why Leipzig will win against Celtic. It was from some sort of Bundesliga website. I kind of glanced at it yesterday afternoon. I read it when I got home. I can give you 5 reasons why they didn't win against Celtic, and it starts with Nicolas Kuhn, but we'll maybe get into all of that. But I just think there was not even an arrogance. I just think a German side of that level coming to Scotland just presumed they would go and take care of it, and that would ignite their European campaign after 3 losses in the bounce. And they get such a rude awakening, Paddy, and those players will have come off the park, I think, shell-shocked to an extent. They all talk about this thing, Celtic Park, it's a bucket list, we'll tick it off, what an experience. But too many players in recent years have come there, enjoyed the experience, and left with the 3 points as well. And that was never happening last night.
No, it didn't seem to be the case at all, and I think you're spot on. Listen, a lot of that comes from the fact that Dortmund did get that result against us. I think that kind of set the media up to think, this is a walkover for Leipzig, which goes back to what, again, you were saying in the weekly show. Credit to the manager for getting the players ready and making them believe again in the space of 4 weeks that they can go and still go toe-to-toe against Europeans' best. And I think one of the players that stood out for me last night, I actually thought it was one of the better performers, especially with his corners, was Kevin Campbell. Come up against him a few times in Europe. A very, very good player. I was reading comments from him basically saying it felt like we were running a marathon the full night. He says we could not get near them. They were always one step ahead of us. He says I was really, really impressed with how Celtic played. And you take a lot of credit from that. And that's exactly the kind of team we've been looking for. We've seen it, as I've said, the first Champions League campaign under Ange, the following campaigns under Rodgers, we've seen those moments of, God, we're just maybe 2 or 3 players away. Those 2 or 3 players are here now, and I think that we're only going to get stronger come the January transfer window. I know we're keeping our feet on the ground, but I read a fact last night. 1 more win guarantees the playoff, with the looks of it with the points. 3 more wins guarantees top 8 if it keeps going the way it's going as well. I can't see why we don't look at those next 3 games and think, why can't we get maximum points the way we're playing?
Yeah. You can keep your feet in the ground if you want. My Tom Fords are sky high, Paddy. I'm off. I think you mentioned some of the performances under Ange in Europe, and there'll always be those comparisons so long as Brendan Rodgers is here, and hopefully that's for a good while to come. And I certainly enjoyed seeing some of Ange's teams and how they approached Europe, but we think back to that campaign where we nearly competed with Madrid. We competed for a 45 minutes against Madrid, and then they run over the top. I think we finished that campaign with 1 point out of 6 games from memory. I need to check that. And at the end of the day, enjoyable as it is, you need to win at that level to be anything, to progress. So all the good football and all the endeavour doesn't really get you anywhere in the bigger picture. And this Celtic side now under Brendan Rodgers, I actually think they've matured in the last few weeks. And I know that sounds quite simplistic, but I put an article out yesterday afternoon about how the Dortmund result could be the best thing that happened to us in this section, because it was such a rude awakening. It was such a sharpener for all the players, and they got a lot of backlash, players and manager, and rightly so. You know, it was such a poor performance. You were there in the stadium that night, and sore one to take. But James made the point as well on the show on Monday night. If you just lose 1 or 2-0 to Dortmund, you go, tough result, but they're a good side. We kick on. And you possibly go into the Atalanta game with a similar approach, and you might lose the Atalanta game 1 or 2-0, and then you've got 2 defeats in the bounce. You get into this one last night with less confidence. The fact that, as I say, Dortmund gave us such a wake-up call, and Brendan Rodgers made subtle but notable changes for the Atalanta game, and it was a different approach. It was the same 4-3-3 that we always see, but it was a different discipline within that 4-3-3, and that was such an important and impressive result. So they got the harsh lessons against Dortmund. They applied those lessons against Atalanta, and went into that game last night with a newfound confidence. And I think you can see it all across the park. I think the general narrative, and I agree with it, is we dropped out the game for around about 15 minutes, either side of their goal. They got a number of corners at the time. They've got some big lads in their team, and I think we struggled to deal with that. But everything that aside, the first 20 minutes or so, and certainly, from, let's say, 10 minutes or so before half-time, Celtic just dominated. And there was some of the best passages of play I've seen at Celtic Park ever. We've all been going a long time. Some of it is sensational, and that is engineered by Nicolas Kuhn, Rio Hatate, Callum McGregor, Austin Trusty, and several others. And to win such a game as last night, You can't have just one or two guys on it. You need to have the majority of your team on it. And I think that was definitely the case for Celtic last night.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that. I think that to a man, they were just switched on. They were up for it. Greg Taylor was a little bit off the pace, but again, not been playing as much lately. I kind of feel that he still obviously had his part in the second goal and fought to win the ball in the corner.
What about his intrusion, Paddy? What do you make of the noise around Valley?
I honestly don't know what's happened there. I'm assuming that it's maybe he's thought about the experience that Taylor has in this tournament and thinking, I'm getting probably what could be my strongest team. Maybe just get that little bit more experience in there. I don't know. There's also talk about Barca apparently now are thinking about bringing Bailly back in January. I don't know if there's anything in that to do with it. I don't want to assume or speculate at all, Tino. But Bailly coming on, what a player to be able to bring on, and that's the difference now. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at the substitutions last night as well. Just very, very clever. I think we spoke about Leipzig seemed to tire in the last 20 minutes. You don't want someone who's as quick and as nimble as Jan coming on. And I know, listen, he's got his critics, myself included. But coming into a game like that, confidence is flowing throughout the full team. It's perfect for him, perfect situation for him. So I just think it was a bit of a master plan from Rodgers last night, and he's executed it.
Yeah. Before I forget to comment on it, I was reading earlier on, I've listened and now watched some of his post-match stuff, and he was very calm and measured, almost to the point where, yeah, this is what we're doing now. This is how we're playing. He wasn't like, oh, what a result, eh? He wasn't getting caught up, and he wasn't dropping wee funnies or wee quips or anything like that. He himself put in a bit of a professional performance post-match, as if to say, this is a level we've been aspiring to get to, and we're not there yet. We're not where we want to be. There's a long way to go. But you can undoubtedly see signs of progress with everything that Celtic are doing just now. Before we crack on, Paddy, just a thanks and hello to everyone that's joining us this afternoon on the live comments. Chris, Monty, Colin, who else have we got? Sean, Paul Byrne, Eugene, Melteg, good to see him. Loads of folks, and it's great to see. So please let myself and Paddy know any comments or questions between now and the end of the show. We'll be here for around about half an hour in total. But loads to cover, Paddy. And the one big star of the show, undoubtedly, was Nicolas Kuhn. He's catching all the headlines, and rightfully so. Caught man of the match on the night. Ex-Leipzig youth player, played there between, I think, 2015 and 2018. And I think for any player, it's always a motivator to go back and perform well against one of your previous clubs. No Andy Halliday nonsense this time around when he scored against his former club. He was absolutely delighted. That's his first 2 Champions League goals, and he's right to be delighted. Second one was really instinctive, was really good kind of team move, great endeavour, great high press. But what about the sheer class for Nicolas Kuhn's first goal? That is right out of the Lionel Messi playbook.
It's just a player that's just found his feet, isn't it? His confidence is there, and he's got real control of the ball now. He knows exactly what his path wants to be. And there was one in the second half. He gets into the same area, but the ball just came up just as he hit it and put it over the bar. But he's very predictable in the sense that he's going to come in the left-hand side, and the left-hand boot, and he's going to like architect that shot that he's trying to bend it into the back post. Any defender will see he's going to do that, but can you get near him? That's the thing. He's too quick, and you could see that last night. I think both our wingers had the full-backs on toast if they wanted. He's a joy to watch now, and just even his tracking back last night, some of the passes just to kind of take the sting out of the situation as well. Just very intelligent play from him as well. He used his defenders well, used Johnson well. McGregor was shown for him really well. And I just thought that he was all over the park last night for us. I thought he was excellent.
Do you think it's quite clear to see that Kuhn's been learning off a Yang in training?
Listen, I still think there's a lot for all of them to learn. I think that we've also got the likes of James Forrest still floating about, and I do think there's an element that they'll all be working well together. They'll all have the same idea of what they want to do. They're all trying to play into the same system, but each of them will have their unique qualities, and I think that they need to be able to be given that freedom to express that as well. And I think that's kind of, for me, what I've seen from Kuhn. I think he's it's more of a free role that he's been given out the right wing, and maybe why we're seeing him pressing up so high, especially against Dortmund. But he did do similar in Atalanta as well. It's because the way he carries the ball, he's carrying the ball, he's making progress up the park, but he's also giving his team enough time to come up and support them as well. I think he's a very, very clever footballer.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There was the various stats that you've seen doing the round, but Nicolas Kuhn, after I think it's 16 games now, he's got 19 goal contributions, of which 9 are goals and 10 are assists. Brendan Rodgers was asked quite quickly in the press conference about Nicolas Kuhn and, you know, what a performance and all that stuff. And I really liked the response. He went, yeah, I thought his pressing could have been better. And he was dead straight. You know, I think there's everybody at Celtic at all times, there's always room for development. Everybody can get better at all levels of football. So he said possibly one of his best games as a pro footballer. And Rodgers is saying, yeah, but he can do more. He can get better. Yeah. And I think that's the mindset in the Celtic camp at this moment in time. And that kind of mentality just permeates through everything you do. And I think Celtic, the good thing is they'll win today. They'll be doing kind of light work or kind of whatever and post-match analysis. They won't be getting all giddy and resting on their laurels. They'll be doing the whole, right, what's next? Kilmarnock on Sunday, okay, let's deal with that one. And then we'll get to Bruges. When we get to Bruges, and we can look at, you know, what's next. Rodgers was asked about the prospect of finishing, you know, high up the group and potentially even top 8. And he's like, nah, we'll just see how it goes. We'll keep doing what we're doing. We'll stay grounded and we'll kick on from here. And I think you can see that across the board. There's a comment there from Chris, elite mentality from Rodgers. Spot on. And it's Rodgers and it's all the players. Paddy, on that note, we can't fail to mention the captain, who has been criticised in Europe at times by ourselves and others. You know, this whole thing about should Celtic resort to the double pivot, but they generally don't. They sit with McGregor and two guys ahead of him. This time it was Engels and Hatate. And at home, it's certainly different than it might be away at times. He was exceptional, wasn't he? Just
outstanding. You know, you could have so many different players pick up man of the match last night. McGregor, I think what we've seen and the difference again coming back to that Dortmund game is, yeah, all right, we're not playing the double pivot, but the support that he's got in the last 2 games from Engels, from Rio Hatate, has given him a lot more time in the ball. It's given him that little bit more breathing space. But what he was doing last night was mop them up. And any loose balls, McGregor was the one picking them up. Any beginning of play, McGregor was the one bringing it out. I just thought he was absolutely everywhere. And I think we've seen the stats, three failed passes last night.
Yeah. I think
that's ridiculous at this level. Ridiculous. There we go.
90 passes and only 3 going astray. Just an exceptional performance. And what you have, it's become a wee bit cliche in football, but you talk about having that real spine through your team, you know, of quality performers. Kasper Schmeichel continues to come up with big moments in big games. That save in the second half, low down to his left-hand side, it was a snapshot. Was it Baumgartner, you call him?
Baumgartner, they got the goal, yeah.
It was an incredible save. And he said another few very decent saves throughout the game. And they're the ones that keep you in it, keep you fighting, because goals change games and all that stuff. And he has switched on at all times. He also must be loving life at Celtic. There's obviously the similarities between Joe Hart and him in terms of coming to Celtic at a late stage in the career. I think he'll be pinching himself on nights like last night in terms of what it's bringing. But in terms of that spine, you've got Schmeichel at the back. Take your pick out of Trusty and CCV. 2 absolute mountains, 2 absolute rocks at the centre of your defence. Callum McGregor ahead of that. And Kyogo ahead of that, who doesn't get his goal on the night, Paddy, but you commented after. His runs, his work rate, and we'll get the stats at some point. The miles or the kilometres he must have put in last night, it's incredible. And it's that kind of work that allows everyone behind him to do their thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right on Kyogo. His pressing last night, the 2 defenders did not like Kyogo sniffing about them all night at all. And you could see that there was that little bit of nervousness kicking in. They're a classy team, Leipzig. The way they were passing the ball about, and when they had that little bit of control in the 10 minutes, they're very comfortable in possession. So the fact you're getting in their face and you're not just doing it for a 15, 20-minute spell, you're doing it for the full game almost. It's testament to all the players in their pressing last night. I'd love to see the stats. We must have ran the most in Europe in that game last night to make life hard for Leipzig. But You're right. It is that spine. You need to work off the sides of it. I think when you look at, for me, another player that again I think maybe wrongly criticised so far, but bust a gut last night was Arne Engels. I just thought he was he showed what he's worth for me. I just think again another player that was. It's not all about the flashy passes. It's not all about making sure you're getting in behind. It's not all about constant attacking. It's making sure that you keep things shored up and making sure that nothing's breaking the lines. And Arne Engels was that guy for us last night as well.
I thought it was a clever performance by him and a mature performance for a 21-year-old lad. And I think last night was huge for him personally and for Nicolas Kuhn personally. They know a lot of their players. I think your man, is it Openda up front, is a fellow Belgian. Him and Engels went through the same youth setup together, I believe, and they're both part of the national setup now. And as much as you've got that friendship, you want to get one over on these guys to prove again that you've made the right move by coming to a club like Celtic. And I'll stress again that eyebrows will have been raised back home when Engels made the decision to come to Glasgow. But anyone who watched that last night will now start to understand why he's made such a move. And obviously for Kuhn, it's just, as I say, I think there's some headlines. There's maybe it's lost in translation, but it's like no mark German defeats Leipzig, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think he'll brush it off. He's quite a balanced young guy, Nicolas Kuhn. And
I would say that's more them saying possibly another German player that's just been missed out by the league comes and does that to a German team. And, there will be teams looking at 100%. And the value only increases after performances like that. Don't want to lose him. But.
No, there's no doubt teams back home will be looking at that. I wonder if he starts to nudge his way into consideration for national stuff for Germany as well. But we'll see. Question, before I forget to ask it, Bridal put it to myself and James this morning. Straight up, is Nicolas Kuhn better than Jota?
I still think it's early for the comparison.
What's your answer?
I think they're both very equal, I would say. Honestly, I really would. I think that Kuhn's delivered on a big stage last night. I think Jota is capable of that as well. I really do. I think I don't want to do the comparison with the two. It still hurts me with Jota. So.
Do you know? I've described Jota as a generational talent at Celtic. I thought he was sensational. I thought he was such a talented player. Great to get the money and all that stuff, but I'm kind of also disappointed that he made the move to where he went. Football in backwater. He's back in France now, is he?
Yeah. I think he'll know the mistake he made as well, Tino, personally. I think he will.
But in terms of guys, Kuhn seems to have he doesn't have the charisma of Jota. Jota carries that kind of star quality type thing, whereas Kuhn's quite reserved as a personality. Yeah. But you cannot deny his quality in the ball and his ability. These numbers just now, Paddy, were well pre-Christmas. We're only into November. 19 goal contributions. You can just give him the player of the year now if you want. You give him at Christmas time and just let him enjoy it. He's just been incredible, and what a huge night for him. As I say, we've kind of touched on various other players. Can't bypass Rio Hatate. He had, and do you know what? We spoke about the fact that sometimes he tries the big pass, the risky pass, and I think he's been encouraged to do so, and it doesn't always come off. He tried a couple last night that were just inches away from being the pass, but he also had some incredible moments. He gets his goal, of course. Yeah. But what about that moment? Second half, I think 3-1 at the time. Is he 35 yards out from Celtic's goal? And he nutmegs Kevin Campbell, the guy that you rave about, and rightfully so, he's a talented guy. Nutmegs him, get out his feet, plays this brilliant through ball. I think it's to Kyogo. It's incredible. And you're watching it, and sometimes you're almost pinching yourself saying, is this us? Is this our Celtic? Because you've seen some ups and downs in Celtic in Europe, but as I say, some of the class between Hatate, Kuhn, the list goes on. It was amazing to see at times.
He was excellent. I think we've seen the performance from him on Saturday as well. He just seems to be really enjoying his football. As we've said before, when you look at that midfield five now, the competition is there. The competition is extremely healthy, and I think that it's 5 players that are all looking to help each other as well. For me, Rio Hatate became a Champions League player last night. I think he was just he dictated what we were doing in the middle of the park, and the composure on the guy is frightening. When he wants to play, when he wants to be at that top level, he can do it. He can switch it on, and I think that everything needs to be going right for Rio Hatate. I think mentally, I think he needs to be in a good place, and I'm definitely seeing that from him this season. The opportunity of going and being basically told, you're the main man for this midfield tonight, you're going to create for us, you're going to get us in behind. And he done it. He done it. As I say, the composure to take the ball the way he did for that second goal, and then the no-look pass as well, like to have that confidence at this level and say, do you know what, why can't we go up against you guys? Why can't we make you guys look as normal, as obviously what you're supposed to be? He was outstanding, and you could tell there was a bit of him that wanted a goal last night. He was getting into some good positions and a couple of really good shots. There was one that was deflected, which was missed for a corner. I thought he'd get right good power behind it as well. But I think, listen, it's a snapshot from Galashi's mistake, but he's still got to put it in the net, and I think he does well with that second goal. I really do. The third goal. He was just outstanding. And if it wasn't Nicolas Kuhn, man of the match for the 2 goals last night, it would definitely have been Rio Hatate for me.
Yeah, do you know, it's 2 games in a row that's happened. Daisen Maeda's hat-trick overshadowed him at the weekend, and Nicolas Kuhn's 2 goals overshadowed him last night, but he's definitely there or thereabouts. There's this narrative that I got annoyed about a number of weeks ago. I mentioned it in the show about, he doesn't want to be here, the body language is poor, blah, blah, blah. I think he's just quite a reserved kind of guy. You know, we see Kyogo by comparison, very bouncy, very kind of bubbly character. That's just not everybody. Rio Hatate's not like that. I don't think Nicolas Kuhn's like that either. And if you're ever in doubt about how happy Rio Hatate is to be at Celtic, just look closely at his expression when he scores that goal. He is high as a kite. He absolutely loves the moment. And also in terms of, any sort of questions over his attitude or his endeavour, he was flat out on the 90 minutes. There was a point where he'd worked hard to win a throw-in high up in Celtic's top left-hand side, and he just lay on his back for a few minutes. He was done, and he gave his absolute everything for the cause, and it was brilliant to see. Paddy, the questions are being asked now, how far can this Celtic side go? And I do think, as you said, it's testament to the manager, the turnaround since Dortmund. That's incredible. That's where the manager earns his pennies in terms of motivating a group who must have been pretty devastated in that dressing room, in Germany that night after the game, and got a lot of grief in the media for the days that follow, and that's part of it. But it's how you respond to things, and that's the real test of character and the real test of a player. Now, all of a sudden, without tempting fate, it would be deemed as failure from this point if Celtic don't qualify at the very least for the playoff round, i.e. finishing in the top 24. But some folks have got us dreaming that we can go even further and finish top 8. And if you do finish top 8, there's various ramifications. Yet the financials are better, of course, but from a footballing sense, I think it offers you an easier route to progress in the tournament, or on paper, an easier route to progress. There's all sorts of coefficient points flying at Celtic as well as a result of this. But can we finish top 8? Is that mad to think, or does the 4 remaining games give us a chance?
I don't think it is. I think, obviously, as I say, we keep ourselves grounded. We listened to our manager last night say it's 1 game at a time, but he'll be looking at it now, 100%, Tino. And I think that if you match the performance of last night in the next 3 games against Club Brugge, Dynamo Zagreb and Young Boys, not taking anything away from them, all very, very good teams, and they're in merit as well. But we've played really, really much harder teams in the last 3 games. You look at Dortmund, Atalanta, and obviously RB Leipzig last night. What we've done is found a bit of momentum, found an understanding of what we're up against. It might be different. There might be different setups we're up against. We might want teams, we might have teams wanting to invite the pressure on, and we might be the ones getting caught in the counter-attack. But what we done last night was dominance. It was total dominance from us, and I think that any team out of those 3 looking at that game last night will be worried. And that's where that elite mentality comes in. You're proud that you've got a result against a big team, absolutely. But it's like when you do it in the league, you need to make sure that you're beating everyone. And I think that's where Celtic need to make sure that they're up for each of these games coming up. I think 9 points is achievable. I do. If this Celtic that played last night show up for each game, I definitely think we could do it.
I also think the fact that you're in this rich vein of form, but everyone wants to be a part of this. So everyone, every time they get an opportunity at training, let alone in games, it's bursting a gut. Everyone wants to be part of what's going on. It feels like something special is going on, Paddy. And listen, whether we kick on to dizzy heights in Europe this year, or maybe it's something that's a slow but steady progression, who knows? But right now, what are we? 6 November, Celtic's birthday, no less, Paddy. 6 November 1887 was when the inaugural meeting at St Mary's in the Carlton to form Celtic took place. So happy birthday, Celtic, and what a way to celebrate it. But there's so much going on just now that everyone wants to play their part. And you mentioned that he got the subs right, and everyone came on and had an impact. And the guy that I do want to talk about briefly that I think had the most impact was Yang.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've put myself out there and said there's a player in Yang. I've also said there's a player in Palmer, but that's another one for another day. I think Yang's got talent, and I think too many folks, and happy to be quite frank on this, too many folks are too quick to knock Celtic players. Plenty of us knocked Nicolas Kuhn. We've seen his early games, and he's not good enough. That's him done. Same with who else? Austin Trusty. About 3-4 weeks ago, Austin Trusty was a dud, and now he's an absolute hero. So you need to give these guys time. There's lots going on. You're moving to new countries. They're young men. They're adjusting a new system. Celtic is a unique club in terms of the pressures to win every game. There's all sorts of stuff going on, and I think you need to give guys certain time and certain runs to ultimately prove themselves. Yang has been in and out. He's had some opportunities. He's not quite taken some. But last night, he has an opportunity on the big stage. You make a valid point, Paddy, that at that point, the game's a bit stretched and Leipzig, to an extent, are a bit tired. But they're still very good footballers. And there's several moments in that cameo that he put in which were just outstanding. There was one defensively where he gets the ball midway inside Celtic's half and he shows lightning feet to just dance away from a guy and then win a foul. There was a passage of play out in Celtic's right-hand side where there was this tiki-taka 1-2s and him and McGregor popping about. All of a sudden it's inside, and next thing you know, Yang's having a shot. It was great to see, and I think he'll take a huge boost from that. The challenge is consistency. Can you do it again? But you cannot tell me, and for all the Yang haters out there, you cannot watch that and say that he's not a talented footballer. It's now over to him to keep working at it and to make the most of those opportunities. But there's a real footballer there, Paddy.
Yeah, listen, what I'm saying with him coming on to a tiring Leipzig team, I'm not saying that as in that's why he's played well. I'm saying it as in that's the tactic. He's another headache for that back four, and I think he was a bit too much for them. I think he's a confidence player. I know we've had this conversation before. I think that the technical side is there. I still think he's learning the game, but he's in the right place to do it. And yeah, absolutely, he will take so much from that last night. We remember a little stint he had in March before the red card at Hearts, where we thought he was maybe starting to build a bit of momentum as well. I think he is a momentum player. I do. Yeah. But yeah, all credit to him for what he done last night. Calmed us down. He really did.
Yeah, absolutely. Paddy, the next challenge, as I mentioned, is Kilmarnock on Sunday. How do you adjust to that? From the highs of last night, and it was very high last night, and the players will be feeling very good about themselves. But there's another important game on the horizon. So, what do the next few days look like from a Celtic point of view, and what kind of messages do you think Brendan Rodgers will be trying to get across to this group?
Listen, make no mistake about it. I think he'll be really, really proud of what he's seen last night. But that's the benchmark now. That is the benchmark. If you look at what you've delivered, it's not been a fluke. It's been a very dominant display, as I've mentioned. Then you're kind of saying to those guys, let's get through this tough period. We've got a lot of fixtures coming up, and it doesn't slow down in January as well now with the additional games. So squad management's going to be huge. I think that as we've said, there is a real unity within the squad just now. They're all playing for each other. They're all working hard for each other. I don't think it's always going to be a starting 11. I think it's going to be, this is the squad, who's going to play within that. And I think as fans, you would be happy with whoever comes in at the moment. That's an incredible place to be at for Celtic, and long may that continue. Just want to give a quick wee shout out. I meant to at the beginning of the show for Rory that I met in Barbie Bowser's last night, listeners for the show, just saying some really, really good things for us, and thanks very much for listening. And the same for all you guys viewing with us this afternoon. I had to check the watch there. Big thank you for that as well, guys. Cheers.
Paddy, and Barbie Bowser's was Chris Sutton annoying you for a picture? This is what I'm hearing.
I had a big man come in with his family after the game. Was talking to his his son James, lovely guy, and just what was a lovely moment was himself basically saying that there's not many times my dad gets to go and watch his games without having to work. Obviously, his media duties that he does, and he said it was really nice to take the game in, sitting next to his dad and watching the team they love, which I just thought was brilliant. You know, a big Celtic fan, James, so keep up the good work with that, mate.
Yeah, brilliant night at Celtic Park for all in attendance, but also for just Celtic fans around the globe, of which we know there's thousands and thousands, Paddy. And just a night to be proud of what we're doing. You know, with enough of these kind of sore ones in Europe, you know, there's games Celtic have maybe lost when they could have drawn. They've drawn when they could have won. Last night you put in all the endeavour, all the work, but all the quality. And even at that, sometimes you don't get what you deserve in football. But I think last night we got exactly what we deserve. Paddy, as you rightfully say, thanks to everyone that continues to support what we're doing at Celtic Exchanges. Again, some brilliant comments that have come in here. Good to see Ian O'Sullivan joining us all the way from Cork. Gypsy King, regular family show. Mappy, Antonio, William Doyle, Emo, loads of folk, Neil Linus, loads of folk that continue to join us here on a Wednesday afternoon. Paddy, I'm losing track of the days. I'm knackered. I'm absolutely knackered. Brilliant performance last night. Barry, your final comments as we start to wrap this one up.
I think as a Celtic fan, we've just been really waiting in these moments for a long time. That dominant display in Europe has been something that, I go back to the Martin O'Neill era where I last seen a display of that again against Lyon. We've got a manager who has basically said, if you back me, I'll deliver this. And I think that we're still at the early stages of that batting, and I still think we're at the early stages of this team getting stronger, which is really, really exciting. To go and get, after 3 games, go and produce a performance like that against one of the best in Europe at the moment, we should be really proud of it. And I'm not getting carried away, and that's the thing for a lot of our fans, is that we're speaking about these next 3 games, and we say, it's Celtic in Europe, but I think I always remember the hoodoo we had with Hampden for a long time, and it was Brendan Rodgers that came in and quashed that straight away. I think he's a guy that really wants to see us do well on the European stage, and I think he'll be looking for 3 wins out of 3 for the next ones as well. Yeah,
and you know, he seems to be in a brilliant place personally. I think the squad are absolutely oozing confidence at this moment in time. But it comes to the manager, he sets the tone and just sets the tempo for everything they're doing. And I just think there's a real unity around Celtic just now. Fans alike, everyone's on board at this moment in time, and it's just really exciting. And do you know what? Kilmarnock isn't Champions League, but it's still Celtic playing, and I think we're still just as excited every time Celtic take to the park, whether it's League Cup, Scottish Cup, Europe, whatever it might be. And I think that's just a real sign and a real testament to the team in terms of what they're producing right now. Barry, thanks for joining me. As I say, I know we're all tired out, but thanks for joining us this afternoon. Thanks to everyone who's joined us live in the comments. Thanks to everyone who continues to listen to the Celtic Exchange podcast. We'll be back on Friday to preview that Kilmarnock game, which is a Sunday kickoff, 3 o'clock at Rugby Park. But until then, enjoy the rest of your weeks, folks. We'll see you all very